the NFC East. Last season was one most fans of teams in the NFC East would like to forget, right? The Redskins took the division title with only 9 wins. Listen to this. There hasn't been a repeat champion in the division since the Eagles did it from 2001 to 2004. So the question to you, Max Kellerman, who do you see as the biggest threat to dethrone Washington?
Would you like me to give Max his answer now before he even starts?
I'm a homer. Go ahead.
The New York Giants.
It's actually the New York Football Giants.
The New York Football Giants. You're damn right.
You gotta get football in there.
Look, I'm a homer. That's right. I am a homer. Forgive me. I've seen a lot of Giants Super Bowl wins in my life for being a homer. Look. The Giants last year had epic collapses at the end of games. It was uncharacteristic of them. Characteristically, in the Eli Manning era, they played very well at the end of games. Maybe the law of averages caught up. Maybe Coughlin had lost the team by then, and obviously he's gone. But if you end games with 75 seconds left last year, they got 10 wins. Well, if. Yeah. But what that indicates is fundamentally they were much better than their record. They collapsed at the end. Don't expect the Giants to collapse at the end of games again this year, especially Spagnola's back, McAdoo, new head coach, the whole thing. Things will be different. They have invested, much like the Cowboys did, though not as severely, not as emphatically, in their offensive line in recent years. When you look at draft picks, they use Richburg and obviously Flowers recently, et cetera. And offensive line play takes time, to gel. They come together over time. It's a lot about communication and chemistry and everything. They have that. But here's the big thing. In a quarterback league, Eli Manning, who, by the way, according to various studies, is the most clutch quarterback in the history of postseason play in the NFL. It's according to 538.com, doing it 2 different ways. He also, knock wood, takes every snap. So even if you want to argue Romo is better game to game, I won't even argue. Is Romo available? And Kirk Cousins is a fine young quarterback. Are you sure about Kirk Cousins going forward? You've seen him do it for a small sample size. And don't even talk about the Eagles right now, what they have under center. Stop Bradford and you draft guys. But Eli Manning, and who's he throwing the ball to?
Right.
To Odell Beckham Jr. And now you got Sterling on the other side. The Giants are clearly the threat in the NFC East.
Well, first of all, for the record, you ain't debating them. You're debating me. You can look over them all they want to. They can't help you.
He just has to get the reaction from all the Redskins fans out here.
They can't help you. That's number one. That's number one. Number two, I just want to make sure that I'm clear for clarity purposes. Brian, I'll lean on you. Did Max Kellerman just say that the pieces are there, and he bragged about McAdoo and he bragged about Spagnola? This is for the same Giants team that had a losing record for the last 3 years, has missed the playoffs the last 4 years.
Yes.
And the only thing they changed was their head coach.
Yes.
I mean, this same team. I just wanted to make sure. About that. So now that we got that out the way, let's be clear about something here. We got Janoris Jenkins. We got Damon Harrison, who's great against the run. They drafted Eli Apple out of Ohio State. Some are projected,
don't forget.
Olivia Vernon. We get all of that. Their secondary should be good. Their defensive line should be better in terms of getting at the passer, because they couldn't do anything until JPP arrived with one hand, albeit. So we got all of that going on. I get that. I understand that, combined with the fact that the Giants paid $200 million on the defensive side of the ball in the offseason to make that happen. I understand the elevated level of confidence. But I got to admit to you, and I'm serious about this, because it makes me sick to my stomach what I'm about to say.
Oh, here we go.
I am absolutely disgusted.
Don't do it.
Really?
Don't do it.
You really believe that from the bottom of your heart?
I believe that the Dallas Cowboys are going to win the NFC East. I really believe that. And it was why, I don't care. Okay, let me be very clear about this. When you think about Ezekiel Elliott and what he can do running the ball and catching the ball out of the backfield, the fact that your own Alfred Morris is now with them, when you look at Des Bryant coming back, when you look at Tony Romo coming back, their defense is going to be suspect. Of course they are. But I think the NFC East, unlike any other division, maybe outside of the AFC North, are pros at beating up on one another. And somebody comes out on top, bruised and battered and mediocre nevertheless, but still out on top. And I think this year, because of Romo and Bryant's return, assuming they stay healthy, I think that they win the NFC East. I'm not sold on the Giants because even though their defense will be vastly improved because of what I remembered, they were so god-awful last year. I mean, number three.
They were 75 seconds away, 4 to 10 wins.
Defensively, they were one of the worst defenses in history.
That's when you make your money.
That's going to happen again?
But
Is that going to happen
so you
again?
go on one hand, oh, the end of the game doesn't matter. But on the other hand, in the playoffs, Eli is so clutch. Like, which one is it?
If throughout a guy's whole career, he's money in the fourth quarter, and then one year there's a hiccup,
Eli's been money for 2 playoff runs.
Oh, he's good in the fourth quarter,
which is only one more playoff run than Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco's an excellent quarterback.
Joe Flacco's a good quarterback.
And how many good runs has Tony Romo had in the playoffs?
Quarterback. Hey, listen.
How many?
Hey, listen. We're not talking about the playoffs.
We talk about the regular
season.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about this season.
Can you rely on Tony Romo to make it through a season?
The biggest threat to Washington is going to be Washington. It is theirs to lose. It is theirs to lose. If Kirk Cousins continues to be the Kirk Cousins we saw over the end of the season, which I believe with Jordan Reed, with Deshaun Jackson, Crowder, Pierre Garçon, he can be. The best left tackle in football plays here, is practicing in Richmond. If these guys stay healthy, I believe the depth is a problem here. But on paper, the people that go out on the field first, the first 22, if the Washington Redskins do what they have to do, they will win.
Well, let me say this. I believe in Kirk Cousins' ability as a quarterback. My question about the Redskins is that the Redskins won 9 games last year. Not one win was against a winning team. Not one. And so, to me, the question remains, is it fool's gold? Or is it fraudulent, or are they legit? Their schedule will be tougher this year. Kirk Cousins is playing for a new contract this year. But there are question marks about this team. Got Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon playing for a new contract. Obviously, you got Doxson, who's a baller. We'll see what he does. All the pieces remain in place. We know that the Redskins, on paper, should be the team. But when have been the Redskins' worst years? When they've had expectations.
And the other thing,
their problem is winning the offseason championship. They didn't really do that this year. They got Josh, but it wasn't about adding a lot of pieces.
Named free agent.
Right, it wasn't. But it came up late, and they said they wanted a corner. What you don't understand, this guy Breland.
Yeah, he's good. Yes, their secondary. You're right.
On paper, D-Hall at safety.
On paper, the starters. You're right. The secondary, for example, goes from suspect to very impressive, potentially on paper. Stephen A's point about the rivalries in the NFC East is true. It really means something. There's no matchup in the NFC East that's meaningless. All those teams have long and storied rivalries. They all get up for each other. I think it's the reason that even when there's a definitive advantage in talent on one side, the NFC East seems to be evenly matched. It seems that any given Sunday, anything can happen. I think that prevents anyone, including this Washington team, which you're right, the starters on paper, very impressive, from running away with it. So then you start to look at other factors, like, for example, strength of schedule. I seem to remember the Giants taking a team that came very close to winning the Super Bowl to the bitter end of that game. The Giants, even when they lost games, were losing to quality teams at the last minute. And again, in a quarterback league, let's go over the quarterbacks. You may have something in Kirk Cousins here, but the jury's still out. Tony Romo, game to game, may be the best performer, but I do not think you can rely on him to be there every week. And Sam Bradford, come on. And then you draft the guy who you hope is going to be something eventually. Yeah. But the Giants have 2-time Super Bowl MVP.
Very true.
Eli Manning under center.
Who's also led the league in interceptions 3 times.
Yeah, that's usually.
Right, so all I'm saying is
that's usually, if you break it down, that's usually not always on Eli, who has a very complex at the time offense to run. And a lot of responsibility
because he wasn't running routes right, and we get all of that. But the flip
side,
the
offensive line was porous.
Wait a minute, and it's still a suspect right now.
It should be getting better now.
Everybody here is suspect, though. That's why you go with Washington and you say they didn't have a win against winning teams because everybody in the NFC East was terrible. You play those guys 6 times, and now
that's why they're not going to run away.
And now your schedule gets a little harder this year because you're the #1 team in the East, which means you play the #1 team in each division in your conference. That will make it harder. But nobody's going to run away with this division. And I think when it comes down to it, when the games get tight, which they do in the end, when you have division games, that this team is more talented than the teams they will be playing to see who represents this division in the playoffs. I'm going with Washington.
Only one playoff team team out of this division?
Only one.
Yeah.
Only one. I agree with that.
It's only one.
And I think that the Eagles will be in last place. With the Dallas Cowboys, listen, I hope I'm wrong because we know I ain't rooting for them.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I think Dez and Romo together make up for a lot. The Washington Redskins, to me, you know, they're unproven because of who they beat. That we got to decide whether they're fraudulent or not. And a lot of that is going to have to do with Kirk Cousins because I have no doubt about a healthy Deshaun Jackson and a Pierre Garçon and a Doxson and Jordan Reed is a stud. He's a stud. I love Jordan Reed. We'll see what happens. But it remains to be seen because the Redskins are one of those teams who have been allergic to prosperity in terms of expectation. I got to see them now that they don't get to sneak up on you and you know they're coming, what they're going to do.
By the way, you keep talking about Deshaun Jackson and Kirk Cousins. That's a tremendous combination. No one can get behind the defense. Like he puts one move on you, Deshaun Jackson's gone.
So,
but actually, the best, most reliable quarterback in the league who won 2 Super Bowls, Eli. The best receiver in the division is Odell Beckham. He's better than Dez, and he's better than Deshaun Jackson, and he's better than anyone on the Eagles. And he's the best. So in a vertical passing league, you have the best home run threat on a team that's been there and done that. And just like the Cowboys' offensive line kind of snuck up on people, all of a sudden it's like that was a liability. Damn, they kept drafting top of the draft with offensive linemen. They're pretty good. One of these years, and it could be this one, the resources the Giants have put in the draft to the O-line is going to pay dividends.
I feel you that. That sounds very, very emotional. It's beautiful. I'm very touched. But I will tell you that it says something to me that despite the $200 million that they paid for the defensive side of the ball, improving their defensive line, improving their secondary, drafting Eli Apple as well, which I hope is going to work out well for them, it says something to me that the Giants' #1 offseason priority was keeping a one-armed bandit in JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul. That was what they said their #1 priority was. That was their #1 priority. He
had a great season.
Listen, he was had a damn good season.
Look,
I like JPP.
I think
it says something to me. I think he's going to crush it this year.
Yeah, I just have one thing to say in conclusion. I think you'll agree. Big Blue!
Yeah, go Big Blue.
Oh, my goodness.
Really?
All right, this is how Vegas sees it, in case you want to know. Giants and Cowboys tied to win the division, followed by the Redskins in the Philly. Not corny, go Big Blue.
No, whatever.
When we come back, Michael Bennett says Jay Cutler is the worst quarterback in the NFL. Did he talk to Stephen A. Smith? No. So what does Cutler think about that assessment? Find out next. First Take training camp tour rolls on for Redskins.